Hello, thank you very much for attending this webinar. My name is Luke, and today I'll be going through an introduction to the ProTax T2 module. So for our agenda today, we're going to go over an introduction to ProTax, including what are the advantages of ProTax, how to buy and the pricing and available tax years, how to get help, Intuit sign, setup and navigation, as well as a basic T2. Now, if you were present for any of my earlier webinars, you'll know that the topics today that we're going to be talking about are quite similar, if not the same, as some of the beginning topics in the other webinars. This is still important information that everybody should know when setting up ProTax or when discovering and finding out if ProTax is the right software for them to use. That being said, however, we will still be going over a T2 and a lot of the important things that you'll need to know when actually preparing T2 returns in ProTax. Starting off, what are some of the advantages of using ProTax? It's a cloud and browser-based software that can be accessed anywhere at any time. It's built on the same tax engine that has assisted thousands of preparers with tens of thousands of returns. You can easily create and share, collaborate on hundreds of returns within your team, and it works on Mac or PC, so there's no actual installation or downloading of the software onto your computer. It just works right away from your browser. When you are trialing ProTax for the first time, you can create up to 7 T2 returns free of charge. You cannot file returns and you cannot print returns. However, you can still go in and create and prepare the return just to see how you like the software and if you'd like to purchase. If you would like to purchase, you can select subscribe, and this will take you to the page where you can subscribe. So I can select subscribe to T2 right here. You can also bundle using our ProTax bundles. So you can package it with the T1, or you can bundle it with the FX bundle as well. So you can pick and choose what modules you'd like. And you can also purchase a one pay. So if I go into one of my T2 returns, I can then go to pricing and I can select one pay. Right here, I don't have the necessary information in the return itself, but you can select one pay, which allows you to file one single T2 return if you're not planning on filing multiple. So you have the freedom to do that in ProTax. For supported years in ProTax, the T1 module allows 2018 and later returns. For T2, tax years starting from January 1st, 2015 to an end date of May 31st of the current fiscal year are supported. For T3 returns, 2020 and later are supported, and for FX 2022 and later are supported. There are a few ways that you can get help in ProTax, starting with the help button at the top of your QuickBooks screen. You can select help and then type in a question related to ProTax. So I'm just going to search ProTax T2, and here I can find a ProTax T2 return guide, which will show me CRA's information regarding it, any common troubleshooting, anything like that you can find using this help search bar. You can also get assistance from support from the return itself. So I'm in this return right now, and I'm going to search ProTax help. I can automatically chat with a support agent by clicking that button. I enter my email address, my name, and the situation that I need assistance with, and I will be automatically transferred to someone who will be able to assist me at that moment in time. I can also visit our online help hub, which is similar to the help button that I just showed. So if I were to type ProTax T2 once again, it'll take me to roughly the same results. And I can, like for example, here's the exact same article that I just found using help, which is the ProTax T2 return guide, which is very helpful for preparers filling out T2 returns. And I can also call this number right here, and I will be speaking to someone who is an agent with ProTax, who is an expert with this kind of stuff. In addition to support from experts and the community, I can also go to our YouTube page at Intuit Accountants Canada, and find a playlist specifically for T2 questions or assistance. So just looking at this screenshot here, how to e-file individual forms in ProTax, how to use work papers with ProTax. So with T2 returns, that's really important. If you have a client that you can pull work paper information into and Giphy information, you can pull that right into from work papers into the return, and a video like that will tell you exactly how to do that. I will also touch on that specifically in this webinar as well, but just as an example, if you ever want to go back and take a look at anything like that, you can go right to that QR code as well, which will take you right to that ProTax specific playlist. Let's quickly go over tax settings in ProTax. So to change information in your return, such as prepare information or where to enter your e-file credentials, you will do so at the top right where it says tax settings. Once you click here, you're going to see a few tabs open up, starting with e-file. So this is where I can enter my e-file number and password, which will then be taken and used in every return I create after doing so. So if I enter these e-file credentials, and then I were to create a return, those e-file credentials will automatically appear on the return. I have prepare info, which is the exact same kind of concept. I enter my information here, and it will go onto the returns for me. I don't have to re-enter them every single return, as long as the information is here under the prepare info tab. So I can do standard prepare information with representative IDs, group IDs, business numbers. I also have one for AT1 third-party service providers. I can enter that here. And moving on to the T3 and FX transmission tab, it's the same sort of information. You can enter your transmitter address and your contact information as well. Under the print tab, this is where I can set up and change print sets in ProTax based on the module. So let's say I want to set a print set that will only go to my client. So if I print, it's for the purpose of sending it to my client. I can click client, and then I can move around forms however I'd like. I can deselect forms, and I can just do whatever I'd like and set up the print sets how I would like to. It also based on year. So if I change the year, I will have to do it again, but this is very specific to the year and module. Moving on to T2, it's the same thing. I can, if I want to do client to send over to my client specifically, I can click that and once again make the changes as necessary. And that's the same for all the modules there. So that's the print tab for you. The letters tab is where you can take already created templates or make new templates or edit existing templates for things such as engagement letters, tax summaries, etc. And you can use that and send it to your client or attach it to your return. So I'm going to go into edit here just to kind of show off what it's about. So if I go into edit, I'm going to see all of these things on the right and in the return itself, or the letter rather. So these are the variables. If I were to put this variable in here, it's going to take that information right from the return. So this variable specifically is company address. Once I put into the letter and I add that letter to the return, this variable won't show up like this. It will just show the company address from the return. So you can customize these letters exactly to suit your needs. And once I'm done, I can just click Save Template, and now I have that template for whenever I want to use it in my T2 returns. And this, for example, was the T2 tax summary. So every time I want to send a T2 tax summary or attach it to the return, I can do so right here. The next tab is options. So these options are configurable and they're up to your preference. So for example, the live auditor mode, save time by reviewing and clearing audit warnings and notices in the return in real time. So this will, and I will show you in a little bit in this webinar, it just shows a warning or an error under the line itself instead of in the dedicated auditor menu. So you can see it in real time, like, hey, ProTax is trying to tell me that my SIN number is incorrect. So I can change that without having to go into the auditor menu to do so. And for last but not least, we have our ProTax lab. So these are exactly as it says, help test early stage features to shape the future of ProTax together. So these are tools that you can go through and use in ProTax. So things like form colors, Intuit sign, which I'm going to touch on in just a little bit. You can enable them or disable them here in the ProTax Labs menu. Let's do a brief overview of books to tax and work papers inside of QBOA. This is where you can enter financial statements and anything that's related to the company's fiscal year. That's important tax information. And we can take that into ProTax and get that information to populate values in the ProTax T2 return. So to start, I'm just going to go to my clients and I'm going to use Craig's Landscaping as my demonstration. And here I'm going to be in the Books to Tax menu. I have Books Review, Work Papers, and Income Tax. To start with, the Books Review tool is for more common and tricky bookkeeping areas, so stuff like incomplete transactions, reconciliations, and account balances. It gives you key tasks that you can prioritize your work. You can also create and customize your own tasks. Moving on to work papers, which is really where this shines in relation to ProTax. Once we're starting with the year-end tasks, this is an area where you can manage and track tasks that need to be completed at the end of the fiscal year. This feature is particularly useful for creating a to-do list of items that need your attention, and it's fully customizable. You can add tasks, you can move tasks around. Next, let's take a look at the Documents tab. This area is crucial for managing all account-related source documents and other permanent files. It consolidates all your documents into one secure location, making them easily accessible. And you'll see I have two different sections here. I have a general section and an account section. The general section allows you to create a customizable folder structure for your documents. And you can organize your files based on categories that are relevant to your work, such as invoices, receipts, reports. Here you can see I have a loans folder, email, PDFs. You can create and customize them however you'd like. In the account area, this section mimics your chart of accounts. It's pre-organized according to your account classifications, which helps in maintaining consistency and order. Moving on to the Review and Adjust tab. This is the area that's designed for reviewing trial balances, to record adjusting journal entries, and adding any necessary conversion notes or documents. So this is what it looks like. And here you can export everything as an Excel as well. And you can reorder columns based on percentages or however you have that set up. And yeah, so Review and Adjust is really just a place where you can go through all of that information and adjust when needed. Now let's take a look at the Grouping and Statements tab. So for the Grouping and Statement tab, it allows you to create lead sheets, group accounts, and summarize information for financial statement presentation. You can export your financial statement presentation by selecting Export as Excel, and which will generate an Excel file of the financial statements, which you can review or share as needed. And you can also reorder columns in the grouping statement by clicking on the gear icon, once again, just like Review and Adjust, and being able to make those changes. Now, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the Books to Tax tab, which is Income Tax. Here is where you start to tax map, which is aligning your accounts with correct tax lines. So I'm going to select T2 Corporation. And here are all of my accounts and assigned to the Giphy codes. So the Giphy codes are lines in the S100, S125 specifically for accounts like this. And if you'd like to map an account, what you can do is here I have some unmapped accounts. I can assign a tax line. So it'll take me to this dialog box where I can physically choose the Giphy code that would best represent this account. And I can edit any single one that I'd like. If something's wrong, I can just go here, edit, and I can map it however I'd like. Now, how this ties into ProTax is I can now select Start Return in ProTax. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And once this loads up, I'm going to have the T2 creation screen. So I can use the year start and year end. I can choose whichever one it is. And the return name, I'm just going to keep it like that for now. So when you're creating a new return in ProTax, you can either start a blank return, you can upload a .gfi or .txt file with the information required for your return, or as we just did with Books to Tax, I can use my QuickBooks client work papers with Giphy mapping. So here is all of the accounts in my client's work papers that are going to be brought into my T2 return and mapped correctly. So that all looks good to me. I'm going to go ahead and select continue to create this new return. And that's just the beauty of ProTax. Now, if I were to go to the S100, just as an example, I'm going to go into there. And now there may be some things that I didn't double check all of the mapped lines for this demonstration. But as you can see, all of those mapped Giphy codes are now in my return. I didn't have to input any values into this return itself. It's all in my work papers and it's all mapped correctly. Back in ProTax, I can create a new return easily. There's a big green button that says create new return. So no, you don't have to just use work papers and start your return from work papers. You can just start a brand new return here in the T2 module in ProTax. So I'm going to go ahead and select create new return. Here I can select my client, or if I don't have a client, I can add a new client. So I'm going to go with my old demonstration, Craig's Landscaping. And here it automatically sets the dates for me. However, I would like to just change this a little bit. I'm going to go like this because I'm also going to use this return as a demonstration for carrying forward. So you still have the same options. You have Giphy mapping, you have uploading a .gfi or .txt file, or you can start a blank return. For here, I'm just going to create a blank return. And I'm just going to change the name to test to show that this is a demonstration. And once I hit continue, wonderfully, this return is now created just like that. And now I have access to the return in ProTax. Now, if I wanted to carry forward a return, I can very easily do so. So this at the top, Craig's Landscaping Test, is the return that I just made. And I also filled out some information, basic address information. So what I'm going to do now is select the down arrow on the same line as the return that I'd like to carry forward. Left click and select carry forward. What this is going to do is take the information and carry it forward. I can also carry forward with current QuickBooks client work paper. So for Giphy mapping, again, uploading a .gfi or .txt file or starting a blank return. I'm just going to assume that this client doesn't have work papers information. I'm just going to start it blank and continue. So let's continue that, and it's going to carry forward this return. So my 2022 fiscal year return just became 2023. And I have this Craig's Landscaping for the legal name of corporation. And if you look to the very right of it, you're going to see a purple bar. This purple bar indicates that that information was carried forward. So if I go, let's go to head office address. Here we go. So this information, all with these purple bars, was successfully carried forward by ProTax. If you're a preparer that's wanting to switch over to ProTax, but has a lot of returns, a lot of carry forward potential, a lot of information that is valuable to you that you'd like in ProTax, ProTax makes it very easy for you to do. If I go to the T2 module and I left click on import returns, I have a few options. I can import returns from Profile, I can carry forward from Tax Cycle, or I can carry forward returns from other tax software. The difference between this option, that's import, and carry forward options, is if I wanted to import a 2022 return from, as an example, from Profile into ProTax, I can directly import that return. So a 2022 return in Profile is a 2022 return in ProTax. The difference being, if I carry forward from Tax Cycle or another software from another tax software's files, I can only carry it forward. So what I mean by that is if I have a 2022 return in Tax Cycle that I'd like to bring into ProTax, I can carry it forward and it would be a 2023 return in ProTax. At this moment in time, from other suppliers' files, we cannot do direct imports, but we can carry forward that information. And again, this makes it very easy in ProTax. So for example, if I want to import a return from Profile, I have the option here to browse for returns or to directly drag and drop my return files. So what I'm going to do is I have a file here, just as a little test file. I'm going to copy that in and I can upload up to 50 at the same time, 50 returns. So you can mass upload quite a bit of returns. If I have more than 50, that's not a problem whatsoever. You just have to finish with this dialog box, finish with these first initial 50 being uploaded, and then you would just do the process over again until you are out of returns. So I uploaded this file. I'm going to select next. Here, I can create the name. So I'm just going to put that as a test or demonstration. There we go. And I can select the client. So here, if I have the client in QuickBooks already, perfect. If not, I can add new. Once again, I'm going to go with Craig's Landscaping. Craig's Landscaping doesn't mind that I'm doing this, even though it's our little test company, no problem. I'm going to select next, and it's going to upload the file. So this may take a bit of time depending. That was just one return, so very quick. So now I'm going to select View Returns, and Import Demonstration is right there. So if I view return, I can now access this return. This file was empty. However, if there is information in your files, they will be imported as well. So all the information that you're entering in profile in this example, it will show up here as well, and not as a carry forward, as direct import and values in ProTax. In ProTax, you can also add engagement letters, and you can also fill out and file the business consent form. So to do that, if I wanted something like the engagement letter, I can just search for the engagement letter and add it to my return. So I have an engagement letter here. It's not completely filled out just based on the information that I'm missing in this return, but I can send an engagement letter, and I can also search for a business consent form. So go to business consent. Perfect. I'm just going to click that. So now this will be filled out with your representative ID and your name, or if it's your group or organization, that will be filled out as well. Anything that's blue will be filled out automatically through the return. And then you can just select business consent. Here you would enter your e-file credentials, and then you would accept and file the return, which is for the business consent form. Let's go ahead and go over some important forms in ProTax for the T2 module. So starting with, I'm of course going to start with some of the most important, like the S100 and S125. So if you have used work papers to carry forward, like I showed earlier, this information will be populated, but if not, you will have to enter these values manually. So you would use the drop-down box and select a Giphy code for each area. So we have assets, we have liabilities, and we have our retained earnings and equity. So you would physically and manually select the Giphy code and write out the value, as well as prior year if it was not carried forward. And once I go to the S125, we can see that it's pretty much a very similar thing that we'll see. So we select a Giphy code and manually enter in the values. Once again, though, if you used work papers and that information was, the return was started off based on that information, then those values will populate, either the S100 and or the S125. Next up, we have the S8 and S8 class forms, which are used to track capital assets and to calculate the required capital cost allowance, or CCA. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the S8 to my return, and I'm also going to add the S8 class. Let me add those to the return. So now I have the S8 in my return, and I have the S8 class. And as you can see, there's a lot of carried forward values here. So for the, especially for CCA calculation, this is all the information regarding it. And that's actually done in the S8 class. So I'm going to select details, and here I am. So let's say I want to calculate a car, just as an example. And I own it, and I'm going to select the class, and then I'm just going to put something like 144,000, just as an example. Cool. Okay, so now that's showing up for either Quebec and Alberta if necessary, if required. And if I go back to the S8, I should see that start to populate. So I have my CCA calculation. You'll obviously need to put more depending on what you have, exactly there's a lot of manual entries here. And if I need to add another asset, I can select add new and then select details, and that will be for my next CCA calculation of my asset. And then I'm going to go over to and add the S8 sup. So the S8 sup is used to reconcile book assets with S8 balances. I'm going to add that to the return. And here is where all of that will be entered. So I have the UCC already starting to be entered, as well as I have the CCA claimed for that class 10, 30%, which I already put into the S8 class. And like I said, ProTax uses this S8 class worksheet to populate the S8. And just to show you how ProTax automatically populates values based on values elsewhere in the return and from other forms, I'm just going to quickly go to the S1 and I'm going to scroll down. And you can see that ProTax has correctly valued that input that we put into the S8 class. So now we can see here that the CCA from Schedule 8 is populating the S1. Moving on to a couple of other forms, I'm going to go ahead and add the S50 to my return. So now with the S50, you would use it to list all applicable shareholders. So this is where you can add it. If I were to put my name, for example, it would create a new listing and a new line, so I can just add the amount of shareholders that I have that are applicable. Then I'm going to add the S141, add that to my return. And here is where I can record any notes that I need to about the return. So that can all be done in the S141. Now let's move on to some other common forms. So if I were to add the S2, I'm going to add the S2. I can use this to record any charitable donations and gifts. I can use this and it will fill out and populate for you and do all the calculations. Moving on, if the corporation paid or received any dividends, the S3 is the form you need. ProTax will let you detail those distributions. So I can scroll down and you can see this is where I can enter all of those values and have them calculate. And then another important form in the T2 module in ProTax is the S7. So this is for aggregate investment income and any income that's eligible for the small business deduction. So you can access that right here. And as you can see, it has all of the values and information you'll need, especially for calculating your small business deduction. Next, we have the S23. Now, the S23 is used for business limit allocation, especially if there's any associated CCPCs. And you'll see that for any associate corporations, I can't manually enter this. So what I need to do is go to RAC details. This is a worksheet specifically for ProTax that allows you to enter multiple corporations that are associated, and that information will flow to places like the S23. So if you're not getting anything to calculate correctly in S23, make sure that the associated corporations are added and filled out here in the RAC details worksheet. Let's move on and discuss the auditor. So the auditor in ProTax constantly scans your file and lets you know if there's any information that is missing or might cause an error when filing the return. ProTax's audit messages are grouped by those that disallow you from filing a T1 and those that are warnings about any potential errors or anything that may stop you from filing the return. So to start, let's select the auditor. And we have 4 tabs here. It's broken down by issues, warnings, sign-offs, and overrides. So issues contain messages that prevent you from e-filing the return. So as you can see, I have a lot of RSI errors here. These will prevent me from filing my return. Now, if I were to select one of these, I can go right to the source of the error and I can correct the message. So let's look for one that I would like to change. So let's go to please provide jurisdiction. I'm going to click that, and this is going to take me right here, and it's asked me to provide the jurisdiction. So I'm just going to put Ontario, and now this error goes away. Poof, gone. So that's how you will clear up your errors. You would go through everything one by one, and you would click on the error and go to where it's telling you the error is and correct it. Now, we have warnings and sign-offs. These kind of go hand in hand. So messages appearing under warnings are most likely going to be suggestions or cautions. The highlighted message alerts you to an error with a social insurance number, for example. In this case, it might be for T2, it might be incorrect business number or anything regarding any information like that. You can also select this. This is the check mark, and this is where you would sign off on it. So if, for example, if you know something's correct, you can go ahead and select the sign off check mark, and it'll now appear under sign offs. So you're just letting ProTax know, hey, this is actually correct. I'd like to sign off on it so that I can be allowed to file it, even knowing that it may potentially cause an issue. And now I have overrides. So overrides include any changes that you made manually to a calculated field. So let me go over to the S1 for this demonstration. Because remember, I calculated that CCA earlier. I'm going to change line 510, and I'm going to make it, let's say, 10,000. And that's going to make a few changes here in the form. Now, if I go to auditor and go to overrides, first, let's take a look at what we see on the S1. Instead of a blue bar on the right side of the value or the line, it's now red. So red means that you made a manual override to something that was automatically calculated by ProTax. Creating an override and manually changing something isn't necessarily a bad thing. If it's a value you know is correct, I'm going to put that in, then you can. The red does not signify that it's necessarily wrong. However, you need to double check that you're actually entering the correct values. ProTax will calculate it automatically, but if you notice that there is something wrong with it, you can make an override. And if I wanted to remove an override, I can just go to the overrides tab and line 510. Calculated value was 21,600, but I changed it to 10,000. So I'm just going to hit this trash can icon to delete the override. And now we are back to normal. Along with the auditor that we have here in ProTax, we also have something that's called the live auditor. So with the live auditor enabled, you can review and make updates in real time. So any erroneous or empty fields are marked with a red border and an accompanying audit message. So let's take a look at this first. So we can see this in action. Please indicate the corporation's taxable capital employed in Canada for previous tax year to calculate the small business limit reduction. So this is an example of the live auditor putting in work. So I'm just going to put in a value and the message goes away. Now, if I scroll down, that one specifically was for a warning, by the way. So now if I were to go to somewhere like type of corporation, it tells me I need to add a type of corporation. And if I were to move over to somewhere like type of business, here we go. This is an example of a error that would prevent you from filing. So please answer yes or no to the International Financial Reporting Standards question. So I'm just going to put yes. And now that goes away. So you can use the live auditor as you're going to resolve any issues without even having to go to the auditor tab. A great feature that ProTax does support is T2 Autofill My Return, or T2 AFR. T2 AFR is a secure service that lets business owners and authorized representatives download information from the CRA to their tax prep software. So ProTax does support this. The sort of information you can expect T2 AFR to deliver are T2 return balances, including refundable dividend tax on hand, dividend refunds other than eligible dividend refunds, general rate income pool balances, non-capital losses, capital gains and losses, capital dividend accounts, and for corporation account balances, it includes prior year payments and credits. With all of that being said, let's go through the T2 AFR process in ProTax. So to start, make sure you're in the return that you'd like to use AFR in, and then select Return Actions, followed by CRA Autofill My Return. Then you can select Visit CRA's website. You'll then be prompted to log into the CRA's login services with your CRA login credentials. Verify the client's business number, and then you can click Next. After ProTax confirms a successful connection, you can go ahead and close the window, and then you can choose the tax year and the data to import, and then click Continue. After downloading CRA's data, ProTax displays a data import worksheet. What you're going to want to do is click Show Only Discrepancies. To import all data into T2, click Accounts on Return. To view the discrepancies between the CRA and your T2, click Expand All, and to complete the process, click Import Selected. ProTax recently integrated Intuit's new proprietary e-signature solution called Intuit Sign. Intuit Sign lets you ask for signatures directly from ProTax without having to track individual emails or files. To use Intuit Sign, you will need an active subscription. So a few features that Intuit Sign includes are unlimited signature requests, time-stamped signatures to keep clients compliant, an authentication certificate attached to each signed document, 7 years of online cloud storage, the ability to store, track, and download client documents, set reminders and expiry for documents to be signed. No account creation is required for your clients, just a one-time password for your clients. And you can track client request statuses in the dashboard. One thing to note with Intuit Sign is there are only 3 major mobile carriers in Canada that are supported. So there's Bell Mobility, which includes Virgin Plus, Lucky Mobile, Bell MTS, Bell Alliant, and Northwest. For Rogers, it includes Fido Mobile, Chatter Mobile, CityPhone, Primus Wireless, Zoomer Wireless, Simply Connect, and Shaw Mobile. And TELUS Mobility, which includes Kudo Mobile, Public Mobile, and DCI Wireless. At the moment, those are the only supported phone providers. So your client must have one of those providers to be able to receive those Intuit Sign requests. Let's now go through the process of using Intuit Sign in ProTax. So to start, make sure you're in a return, and then once you're in the return, select Request e-signature. Then you'll be able to select up to 5 forms per request, and you can click each form for whichever ones you'd like to have e-signatures for. So I'm going to go ahead and select the business consent form, and then select Next. Here I can review the documents that I selected for Intuit Sign, and then I'm going to select Next. And I'm going to quickly fill out my client's information. So now I have my client's information all filled out. Here I can customize what the subject line of my email will be, as well as what else is included in the email message. So I'm going to go ahead and select Next. And I can change the reminder and just the reminders, and as well as the request expiry time I can set as well. I can select Next once again. And then this is where I can review all of the information. And once everything is reviewed and it all looks good, I'm going to select Send. It's going to create the envelope and send it off to my client. Now I'm going to go to the dashboard. And this is where you can see all of the signature requests that you've made to all of your different clients, including name, email, the actual documents that were sent, the last activity, the status of the e-signature, as well as actions that you can take. So I scroll down and I see mine right at the bottom there. Here I can see all of that information, and I can either send a reminder, I can select void, which will void the e-signature request altogether, and I can show the history of that e-signature request as well. So that is how you use the Intuit Sign feature inside of ProTax. Let's take a look at return actions that you can take inside of a T2. So in my return, I'm going to go ahead and select return actions. The options I have are CRA autofill my return, which we already spoke about. Import work papers Giphy. So if you have a client in QuickBooks Online Accountant that you have work papers information for, you can import that from this section if you did not start the return with it already. You can go to work papers. You can upload a .gfi file if you have one. You can export the return to Profile, so you can use the file in Profile. You can print the return, or more specifically, you can print this form or letter. And some other actions you have are you can duplicate the return, save and close. You can securely share this return with anybody in your firm, only those who have access to this client in your firm when you send this link will be able to have access to the return. You can rename the return, or if you'd like to delete the return, this is the section where you can delete your return. To end off the webinar, I'd like to go over how to file the T2 as well as refile it if you need to make any amendments to the return. So starting off, like I said earlier in the webinar, to enter your e-file credentials, just go to tax settings and enter your e-file number and password here. So let me go back into my return. Now I have the option to select e-file, and I can select T2 Federal. Here I actually have two options to file the return in ProTax. This is unique to the T2 module in ProTax. I can either e-file the return or I can net file using web access code. So I'll have my e-file credentials here if I'd like to e-file, and then I can select file return. If I'd like to net file with a web access code or WAC from the CRA, I can select web access code, and I can enter the web access code that the CRA has given me. If I don't have a web access code, I can just go ahead and select request WAC and e-file, which will request the web access code and file it at the exact same time, so you don't actually have to input the WAC number. It'll just do it automatically. In this window as well, you can see a federal summary as well as a PDF copy of the return if you'd like to review it that way. Moving on to amending a return, it's always recommended to make a copy of the original return before you amend it. So I can select return actions, and then I can select duplicate return, and then I can make the necessary changes. You always want to have a copy just in case. So to amend a T2 return, we're going to have this return open in ProTax, and we're going to make any of the changes that we need to. It could be whatever needs to be amended. You just have to make the changes. Next, I'm going to go to the info form of the return and then go to filing. And I'm going to scroll down until I see the question, is this an amended tax return? I'm going to go ahead and select yes. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new form to this return, and it's going to be the T2 ADJ form. So this is the T2 adjustment worksheet. I'm going to add that to my return. Once that's added, I will have my business number, corporation's name, tax year end, and as well as is this an amended tax return. Then I can review this sheet, and I can also enter any descriptions that I want. So I can write out the adjustments that I made. So once that's done, I can go ahead and select e-file, T2 Federal, and file the return either with e-file credentials or a web access code. And that is how you refile a T2 in ProTax. I just wanted to take a moment to thank everybody for coming to this ProTax T2 webinar. I hope that it has been informative and will help you create and file your returns in ProTax. Thank you very much and have a great day.